Hi guys. So welcome to the writing workshop. Thank you guys for coming. As Anaya stated earlier, we're just going to be giving some advice on how to write your application, since I know it can be kind of daunting, given how sort of broad the questions can be and sort of what we're looking for in our application. Okay, so I wanted to reiterate what the purpose of the written application is, because in reflecting on that, I think it'll really help to get you on the right track for what we're sort of looking for and what you write about. So we want to get to know you as an applicant and your interest in EMRA, right? So it's sort of like a two-way street. You have to think about what EMRA can provide for you, right? But also, what can you bring to the table? How can you add to our mission? Okay. Another thing I'd like to say is this is a great opportunity to tell your story and talk about how those experiences are interweaved with sort of our mission, the studies that we do, and any committee work that we also do. So I just like to say that the stronger applications typically demonstrate extensive knowledge about EMRA and also interweaves personal stories. Okay, so I want to reiterate what our vision and mission are, and this should be something that you're constantly thinking about when you are writing your application. Okay, so the vision is to advance the practice of emergency medicine through clinical research and to develop the next generation of responsible leaders in healthcare. Okay, so I want you guys to think about how are you going to contribute once you are in this program, right? How can you prove that you will develop in a way so that you can be responsible and also a potential leader in healthcare? Looking at the mission, right? We also talk about the mission is to meaningfully assist in ED faculty conducted clinical research studies and equitably create a culture of continuous learning and professional development among volunteers by offering opportunities for research, clinical experience, mentorship, and collaboration. So what that means is our program is primarily a clinical research organization. That's the basis of what our mission and everything that we do is based around, right? So if you're pre-med, right, and you just want pre-med opportunities, right, and you only write about that in your application, that's not going to be something that is very unique, right? Because it doesn't capture the mission that we're trying to accomplish, which is to further ED faculty conducted clinical research. So I would recommend applying to this organization if you're truly interested in the research studies that we do. Okay. And that involves sort of going on Instagram, looking at our website, checking out all the opportunities that we have. It also says here that we encourage a culture of continuous learning and professional development, right? So that means that we're typically looking for people who seem like they have a lot of room for growth in our organization, right? And are just very curious and really want to learn about what we can offer and how our clinical research is done. Okay. So um, those are things that you can only accomplish by really knowing what our program does. So how can you actually get to know EMRA better, right? So first, I'd recommend if you couldn't make it to the in-person info session or the Zoom one, we have the info session video on our YouTube. I really recommend listening to what we're talking about, right? Like the clinical research that we're involved in, what you like about the clinical research, and also the committee work, right? And I also want to note that our Instagram provides a lot of information about the most up-to-date things about the commitments that we do in our committees and sort of like what we're up to in our research and committees in general, right? And then, of course, there's also a website where you can learn about alumni and sort of what we do and sort of the general description for our committees and studies. But I'd say that the info session and the Instagram are really ways to really go more in depth in terms of what sort of commitments we currently have in our committees and research. Okay, so this ties into our answer for question one, right? So for question one, it asks to please describe your specific interests in UCLA's Emergency Medicine Research Associates. Talk about what specific aspects of our program interest you, right? So as I was saying earlier, right, we want to see that you really researched our program and you found the parts that really appeal to you. Okay, so that means checking out the website, checking out the Instagram, looking at specific opportunities that you can really talk about, right? You don't just say that you're interested in clinical research. Talk about what specific things we've done in our studies that you're interested in. Remember, and just remember to keep our mission in mind, which is what I read earlier, right? Our main goal is to conduct clinical research. So this is a good test that I thought of to think about whether or not your answer is good for question one. And it's after you've written your answer for the question, if you can swap out EMRA for any other pre-med organization, that means you weren't specific enough, right? If you have strong interest in pre-med, like pre-med opportunities, that's totally okay. That's why a lot of us are interested. There are a lot of opportunities that you can get in this organization that'll prepare you to apply to medical school. But also remember that, those other opportunities exist elsewhere too, and that we focus on clinical research. So what is it about our organization that stands out to you? Okay. And this requires just doing research and thinking about which parts of the program are actually suited for you. Okay, so I listed here an example of an answer that just typed up myself that's a little generic. So I can give you guys like 20 seconds to read it, and then I can talk about it. Okay, so hopefully you had enough time to read it, and I also want to point out the areas of improvement, right? So as I was saying before, we primarily focus on clinical research. So please make sure that if you're interested in this program, that that's something that appeals to you, right? Not only that, but you need to be more specific in terms of what we've actually done in the organization and the opportunities that we provide. So that includes the research studies that we've done and the committee work that we've been doing. Um, and then finally, I didn't learn very much about the applicant and how our organization truly connects with them. And they could have talked more about themselves in relation to what they'd like to do in EMRA. So that involves bringing in your personal experiences that'll help to strengthen your answer and make it more personable.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sophia. I'm also one of the program leads, and I'll be going over question two. So the question is, what matters to you and why is that important to who you are? Though you are welcome to write about anything here, we strongly encourage you to choose an example outside of medicine. So a few key points I want to point out is you can talk about anything. You can talk about personal experiences. You can talk about hobbies, family, community, anything that has had a meaningful impact on who you are. But my main advice is to really reflect on that experience. And something we see a lot is applicants tend to get caught up in the storytelling of the actual event, which is great. And you can convey what happened or, what the event or hobby is. But we also want to see in the essay that you've reflected on that experience or activity and you've learned from it or grown from it. So reflection can be in many forms. It can be your thoughts on it, how it's changed who you are, or reinforced a key part of who you are, how you've implemented what you've learned into future endeavors, things like that. So, one thing to remember is be sure to not be too vague. It can be also easy to say very general statements. Um, Going on that reflection train of thought, but make sure to back up these broader statements with more concrete details of how you've implemented what you've learned going forward. Because we want to see how you're able to implement your reflections into the work, whether it's an EMRA or not. And again, I just want to reinforce that although this is a pre-health organization and we do conduct clinical research, so it may seem like you have to write about something academic or medicine related or science related, but truly we're asking you to just tell us about yourself and we're trying to get a holistic, very well-rounded view of who you are. So feel free to talk about any small detail or large experience that you've encountered. Don't be afraid to get creative with it. Just make sure to convey the importance of that experience as well.
Hey guys, my name is Renav. I'm also one of the program leads here at EMRA. So for question three, it asks you to tell us about a challenge, either personal, academic, or non-academic, that you faced in your life so far and how you demonstrated resilience to overcome it. What have you learned from the situation? How has it influenced you as a person? And how would you apply this to our program? So one of the biggest things, or one of the biggest pieces of advice that I would give for this question is reflection is really key here. A lot of the times we find ourselves looking at applications in which applicants spend too much time explaining the situation and how it affected them rather than, how did they grow from the situation and how, despite these challenges, they became the person that they are today. That's the more important, and that should be the more like brunt of your essays because that allows us to see who you are as a person because that's what matters a lot to us when you're reading these applications. And then, like exactly like it says on the screen, like a large chunk of your response should be how you addressed the problem, overcame it, and what you learned from that situation. Remember that this entire question is more to get to know about you as an applicant, not about the story. So like it's, rather story, like a lot of people get caught up and I know when I was applying, I got really caught up in making sure my writing was perfect and making sure that I was writing a story that's cohesive. But that's not really what we're looking for. We're looking for more ability to understand and recognize issues that you faced and how you can grow from it. The second part of the question is also pretty important, and a lot of people tend to miss it. How would you apply this to our program? We want to know like the skills and qualities that you've gained from this like issue and this challenge, and how you know, would bring that in order to demonstrate in this part of the question. Like, make sure to demonstrate your understanding of what we do as EMRAs and how, um, and that could be done through like looking at our Instagram, like Philip said, or even our website. It's a lot more, it gives you a lot more information on what we do because a lot of our like stuff that we do as EMRAs require a lot of skills that come with overcoming challenges. And yeah, we can move on to the next slide. So question four basically states, is there anything else you would like to mention for consideration? Please also use the space to explain any aspects of your application, such as GPA, volunteer status, that may be of concern to the recruit team. Um, just to preface this question isn't considered, like we won't really evaluate this question. It's more of an opportunity for you to write anything that you feel that you didn't like really talk, that there's like gaps in your application that you want to talk more in depth about in this question, that allows us as the coordination team to get to know you better and get to understand these gaps better. Don't get too caught up on this question. It's if you have, it's an optional question. So if you leave it blank, that's totally fine. I know I left it blank when I was applying. So don't be too scared about it, but really use this. And I think the best way to use this question for your best of your abilities and for your strengths is to discuss any gaps in your application that you'd like to highlight and tell us more about. That gives you there's a lot of, like for example, like GPA, like there's a lot of issues or a lot of factors that affect into it and that are personal. So if you want to bring that up in this question, you could do that. Or if you don't think there's much you could say in this question, there's not much you don't really have to either. So the question isn't really graded or on like a scale. It's just for you guys to describe anything else that you'd want us to know.
Awesome, thank you. So now I'm going to talk about just some other miscellaneous advice. Um, I wanted to give sort of like a note about using college applications. Um, so it's totally okay to use those same stories that you've used in your college applications, just because those might have been really formative in your development and and basically important to bring up. But I just want to make sure that you guys know that you have to, answer the prompt and make sure it relates back to EMRA, right? So if you take an answer that you had for like a personal insight question for like UCs, right? And you just copy and paste it, it's really obvious that it's copy and pasted because it will not like directly answer the question, and it's like there's no mention of EMRA and it doesn't really relate back to EMRA, right? So because of that, it's pretty obvious if you just copy and paste it, and that's not what we want you to do. We want to make sure that you share your story, but also make sure that you're answering the question. Also, overall, I just want to say that we focus on reflection and maturity and make sure you focus on it in your application, right? We're not necessarily looking for the person who has a lot of clinical research under their belt already or a lot of experiences already. The point is to get those experiences in EMRA, right? So you might be applying without any of those experiences. And I know a couple of us, we applied when we didn't have those experiences. It's more so talking about the experiences that you have had and being able to reflect on it and being able to show your maturity. I also want to just note that there's no best time to apply. Um, this just comes down to not making excuses for yourself. If you think you don't have a good relationship with the professor yet or anything like that for their letter of recommendation, right? I just want you guys to note that, just put your application out there, just apply. I mean, when I was applying, I just got into UCLA and I talked to a TA I knew for 4 weeks or 3 weeks and asked if she could write it for me, right? And that was enough. So I just want to make sure you guys know that like now's the time to apply. Don't wait. Like just put your best foot forward and I think you'll get a lot out of it.